It's the full picture of the terror of the crisis that took place in the nation's capital on Wednesday is coming into focus. First of all, we should say this. There is a death toll which now stands at 5. And we should note that is one greater than the number of Americans who died in the attack on the U.S. government buildings in Benghazi over 8 years ago. The last time an American government building was overrun by a rampaging and violent mob. And that led to more than 2 years of investigations, dozens of congressional hearings. 4 of the people who were killed as a result of the Capitol attack appear to have been rioters themselves, one of whom was shot in the neck by police as she and others attempted to break into the Speaker's lobby just outside the House chamber, as you can see in this video. The most recent casualty of the mob that the president and other Republicans incited is Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick. He's a 42-year-old veteran. According to reporting, Officer Sicknick was struck with a fire extinguisher amidst the chaos on Wednesday. He succumbed to his injuries last night. And that means the U.S. Capitol is now the site of a homicide investigation, among other things. What we saw happen on Wednesday was the apparent murder of a police officer by members of a mob incited and directed to the Capitol by the President of the United States, who hoped they would successfully intimidate members of Congress out of certifying the rightful Democratic victory of his political opponent. And we all watched this terrible spectacle unfold live on television. The images broadcast were largely not the most horrifying ones of the day. Much of what we saw, silly costumes, people taking selfies and grabbing the Speaker's lectern, looked kind of like a group that might even attend a Trump boat parade. But
a threat from Nancy Pelosi saying if President Trump does not leave office immediately, House Democrats will take action to make him the only president in history to be impeached twice. And now the first Republican senator to say, I want him out. The president saying he won't attend Joe Biden's inauguration. We'll tell you how Biden is reacting to that. Disturbing new video inside the siege, the pro-Trump mob bashing windows and the Capitol doors. The moment an officer opens fire, killing one of the invaders, and the federal investigation launched after a Capitol officer dies from his injuries. The manhunt for the rioters, the man seen with his foot on a desk in Nancy Pelosi's office, arrested. The charges he faces, a Republican state lawmaker who live-streamed himself storming the building, and dozens more also arrested. All of it as the U.S. hits a grim new milestone, over 4,000 COVID deaths in a single day. And the new warning, does the U.S. now have its own fast-spread video of the chaos that left among the 5 dead a Capitol police officer?
President Trump's chaotic tenure could take yet another dramatic turn, with House Speaker Nancy Pelosi tonight saying she's preparing to impeach him for a second time if the president does not resign for inciting the Capitol Hill riot. Earlier writing, quote, if the president does not leave office imminently and willingly, the Congress will proceed with our action. Even saying she had called the chairman of the Joint Chiefs to ask about, quote, preventing an unstable president from ordering a nuclear strike. And tonight, congressional officials tell NBC News 3 House Democrats on Monday are planning to introduce articles of impeachment. President-elect Biden tonight, pressed by NBC's Jeff Bennett, says he'll leave any decision on impeachment up to Congress.
He's been an embarrassment to the country, embarrassed us around the world, not worthy to hold that office.
It comes after President Trump announced he will not attend Biden's inauguration, and just hours after he tweeted a video in which he personally acknowledged defeat.
A new administration will be inaugurated on January 20th. My focus now turns to ensuring a smooth, orderly, and seamless transition of power.
And after earlier praising rioters who ransacked the Capitol, a shift in tone.
To those who engaged in the acts of violence and destruction, you do not represent our country. And to those who broke the law, you will pay.
Congressional Democrats say that's not enough. At least 230 are demanding President Trump be removed now, just days before his term is over. But with 2 sources telling NBC News Vice President Pence does not support invoking the 25th Amendment to remove him from office, now the calls for impeachment.
I think the American people have seen enough, and they are ready for us to do the job of impeaching this man.
Tonight, Lisa Murkowski, the first Republican senator to call for the president's resignation, telling the Anchorage Daily News, "I want him out. He has caused enough damage." But Republican Senator Lindsey Graham heckled today at an airport for criticizing the president. Said another partisan impeachment would further divide the country, tweeting, "It is time to heal and move on. If Speaker Pelosi pushes impeachment in the last days of the Trump presidency, it will do more harm than good." Other Republicans agreeing.
I think it's a ridiculous discussion to have. You don't have the time for it to happen, even if there was a reason.
Meanwhile, one of the president's former top aides calling for him to leave now.
Innocent Americans are dead because of the actions of that day and the lack of leadership in those critical hours.
As Biden says the president's absence from his inauguration is welcome.
One of the few things he and I have ever agreed on. It's a good thing I'm not showing up.
Tonight, video shot by a self-described civil rights activist shows the terrifying moments rioters reached the door of the Speaker's lobby leading to the House chambers. In a tense standoff, officers try to keep their cool. The crowd advances, then smashes the windows. When Capitol officers move aside to make way for a tactical team, the mob begins climbing towards and through the door. At that moment, an officer on the other side opens fire. Protester Ashley Babbitt falls to the ground, fatally wounded. The officer who fired the gun now on administrative leave. Meanwhile, at the Capitol today, the flag at half-staff to honor Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick, who died from injuries he sustained in Wednesday's violence. The FBI now leading the investigation. The Sicknick family says Brian is a hero, and that is what we would like people to remember. The FBI reports dozens have now been arrested for Wednesday's rampage, including 60-year-old Richard Barnett of Arkansas, photographed in Speaker Pelosi's office, charged with illegal violent entry and stealing Pelosi's mail. Also charged Lonnie Kaufman of Alabama for possession of 11 Molotov cocktails, handguns, and a semi-automatic weapon. And West Virginia state lawmaker Derek Evans, who live-streamed himself charging the Capitol. Some suspects have identified themselves as well. Josiah Colt, who climbed down from the Senate balcony, then sat in Vice President Pence's chair, says he was caught up in the moment. In a statement to KBOI-TV, he says, "My actions have brought shame upon myself, my family, my friends, and my beautiful country. I beg for forgiveness from America and from my home state of Idaho." Former Midland, Texas mayoral candidate Jenny Cudd posted her own video.
We did break down the Nancy Pelosi's office door, and somebody stole her gavel.
Nationwide, hundreds of federal agents are pursuing riot suspects. Among the felony charges they could face, felony rioting, federal assault and murder charges, obstruction of Congress, destruction of congressional documents, conspiracy and insurrection. Tim Gallagher is the former FBI special agent in charge in D.C.
This is an act of domestic terrorism. So this is what the FBI will be focused on 24/7 to both looking backwards, lock up lawbreakers, and looking forward to help keeping this city and keeping America secure.
Threat to national security, democracy, and the Constitution, if allowed, to remain in office. Speaker Pelosi today condemning Trump as, quote, unhinged and unfit, saying that if he does not resign, they will move forward with impeachment. Another member of her leadership team is backing impeachment and calling on the other executive branch of government to act as well. Plotting on the action at these riots. Newly revealed video exposing rioters breaking down a barricaded door, some overwhelming officers and clashing with them. That's significant for many reasons. It's a crime. It's also a contrast to some of the first footage that went viral that appeared to show a different tenor. There's also new evidence showing criminal and violent motives for plans that were even worse than what went down Wednesday. Some rioters now exposed and caught bringing tools of kidnapping, this one with zip ties that could be used to kidnap or illegally restrain hostages. Others brought bombs. We're lucky they didn't go off. An Alabama man, we now know, tonight brought 11 Molotov cocktails discovered in his nearby truck. He also had gasolines by some of these Trump supporters. Now, some plotters were writing on a website popular with QAnon followers, "We will storm the government buildings, kill cops, kill security guards, kill federal employees and agents." And then, yes, this is where the Trump plot comes back, quote, demand a recount. Barnett, who famously now broke into Speaker Pelosi's office, bragging about stealing her mail, arrested and charged with entering and remaining on restricted grounds, violent entry, theft of public property. Tonight, the number of arrests has now topped 50, including 13 federal charges. That's a step. That's more than Wednesday. Each case may yield more information or even some accountability. But remember, that number occurs even as one House presses for impeachment for what they call a presidential crime. It's a low number. The D.C. police still arrested Black Lives Matter protesters at over 6 times this rate for far more peaceful marches just this past summer.
It can be used as weapons. Claire McCaskill, you know the Senate well. I assume do you have a memory of anything near like this?
We just saw protesters walking through Statuary Hall, Claire. I don't want to interrupt, but we just saw people going right through. There they are.
And our
flag in Statuary Hall. Now that is the area.
Is that the Walt Whitman camera that's capturing those? I believe.
No.
Whitman statue.
I'm not sure whether that's the Walt Whitman camera, but what that is the area where the senators process to go into the House for joint sessions. So it is through there that they walk.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
we are televising the breach.
Listen,
by the way.
in order to get to the Capitol, I mean, the Capitol is a free place to go. You are allowed to go to the Capitol. But you got to go through metal detectors. You got to go through security. And when you breach that, you haven't gone through security. And you got to imagine that is making a lot of the Capitol Police and other folks inside the Capitol right now very, very uncomfortable and very nervous.
I mean, the electoral vote mahogany boxes were walked through that Statuary Hall, right through there. These are people you can't get through with a hairbrush that's metal. How do they get through with a flagpole through the metal detectors?
This is like watching some scene from a bad movie.
I worked for years in that building, and
it's unbelievable. Garrett Hake you have some new information for us. Sorry, Katie, didn't mean to cut you off. But I think
I'm just watching this now, and just to put it in context of how extraordinary it is, in Statuary Hall, at the left of your screen, that door there is a position you sometimes see us go live from with that big statue of Will Rogers over our shoulders. That's maybe 20 yards off of the House floor, if that. And there is nothing between these protesters and the floor of the United States House except about 20 yards of marble hallway and one big door. And to put another finer point on it, last time I remember big protests in the Capitol complex was around the Kavanaugh hearings. Those protests were confined to the outer office buildings. Even then, when these buildings were open to the public, we knew there would be big protests happening. You can't get into this building unless you're a guest, you're on a list, you've been screened, you've gone through metal detectors and so forth. To have people just milling about at this level of sort of proximity to the inner cloister of the federal government is nothing like I've ever seen before. I mean, it just doesn't happen. And there's, as you can see clear as day from the video, there's no meaningful police control of that situation. I see some officers on the bottom left of the screen, but I mean, clearly they're pretty fully out.